For centuries, humanity has looked up at the night sky, searching for answers hidden among the stars. From the earliest astronomers who tracked the wanderings of planets, to the modern-day scientists studying distant galaxies, the cosmos has always been a reflection of our deepest curiosity. Yet, every once in a while, something extraordinary crosses into our cosmic neighborhood, something that doesn't belong. In 2025, astronomers from around the world began tracking a mysterious object that appeared suddenly in the field of vision of Hawaii's Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, better known as ATLAS. At first glance, it looked like a faint, fast-moving speck of light among the thousands of asteroids routinely cataloged every year. But as researchers began analyzing its trajectory, one fact became unmistakably clear. This object wasn't bound to our sun. It had come from interstellar space. They named it 3I by Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected by humans, following the discoveries of 1I by Oumuamua in 2017 and 2I by Borisov in 2019. But while those earlier visitors had already astonished scientists, 3I by Atlas seemed to defy expectations in ways that even seasoned astronomers struggled to explain. It was moving at an extraordinary velocity, faster than any known comet from our solar system, and its trajectory appeared to take it directly toward the orbit of Mars. At first, this was considered a rare scientific opportunity. NASA and the European Space Agency quickly mobilized teams to track the object, hoping to gather valuable data before it disappeared forever into the darkness between stars. But within weeks, the tone began to change. Observatories in Chile, South Africa, and Japan all began reporting anomalies, strange fluctuations in brightness, erratic spin patterns, and unexplained variations in its light curve. These weren't the kind of irregularities that could be easily explained by dust, ice, or gas jets. Something about 3I by Atlas was different, almost as if it was reacting to something. As the object drew closer to the inner solar system, its behavior became even more puzzling. Unlike Oumuamua, which reflected sunlight like a dry, tumbling rock, 3I by Atlas seemed to emit a faint glow of its own, especially in the infrared spectrum. Instruments aboard the James Webb Telescope detected signatures that hinted at compounds never before seen in natural interstellar objects. Astronomers were fascinated and unsettled. Whatever 3I by Atlas was made of, it wasn't just rock and ice. It seemed to contain metallic elements that interacted strangely with sunlight, possibly absorbing radiation and releasing it back in unusual wavelengths. Some theorized it could be an ancient fragment from a long-dead planetary system, its core exposed after eons of cosmic erosion. Others speculated something far more radical, that it might not be entirely natural at all. By mid-2025, when 3I by Atlas entered the region between Earth and Mars, NASA confirmed that the object was rotating irregularly, as if some internal mechanism or structure was influencing its motion. The Deep Space Network recorded odd fluctuations in its radar reflections, similar to those observed when signals bounce off artificial satellites. While no one at NASA publicly stated that the object could be of intelligent origin, privately, the data suggested it warranted attention far beyond a typical cometary study. As 3I by Atlas approached its closest point to Mars, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Dozens of observatories were locked on its trajectory, and several probes, including ESA's JUICE spacecraft near Jupiter, were reoriented in hopes of capturing deep-field images. Then, just days before the closest pass, something unexpected happened. The object's light suddenly dimmed, almost as if it had powered down. Within hours, its signature faded below detection thresholds, leaving scientists confused and frustrated. But less than 48 hours later, it reappeared. Brighter, hotter, more active than before. Observatories reported a sudden burst of energy from the object, a surge unlike any seen from natural comet activity. It emitted a powerful plume that expanded thousands of kilometers into space. For a moment, it even outshone Mars itself in certain wavelengths. What caused this outburst remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 21st century. The event sent ripples through the global scientific community. NASA held emergency briefings, the European Southern Observatory extended observation time, and amateur astronomers across the world captured rare footage of the glowing anomaly streaking across the Martian sky. Theories flooded in. Some proposed that 3I by Atlas had collided with an unseen fragment of debris. Others said it was passing through a region of magnetic turbulence near Mars, triggering a chemical reaction on its surface. But a few researchers, quietly, cautiously, proposed a far stranger explanation. They noticed that the outburst wasn't random. Its timing matched a precise orbital alignment, when Mars, the Sun, and 3I by Atlas formed a near-perfect geometric configuration. If this were coincidence, it was an extraordinary one. Some scientists wondered if 3I by Atlas could have been responding to solar radiation in a way that mimicked intelligent design, like a vast, self-regulating system of unknown origin. Meanwhile, the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, began analyzing high-resolution data from its Mars orbiters, which had captured faint electromagnetic disturbances coinciding with the outburst. These weren't the kind of signals produced by solar storms or cosmic rays. They appeared structured, as if following a rhythm. To this day, no one has been able to conclusively explain them. As public fascination grew, so did conspiracy theories. Online forums lit up with claims that NASA had discovered something enormous and was hiding the truth. Some said it was an ancient probe from another civilization. Others insisted it was a fragment of a shattered megastructure, a technological relic drifting between the stars. NASA, however, maintained its official stance. 3I by Atlas was a natural interstellar object, and the anomalies were likely due to complex outgassing effects. But behind closed doors, scientists continued to debate. A recently leaked internal report suggested that 3I by Atlas was unlike any object ever observed. Its density was inconsistent with ice or rock, and its reflectivity didn't match known comet materials. Even more intriguingly, the pattern of its light fluctuations repeated in a regular cycle, a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. In late August 2025, just as the object made its closest approach to Mars, something remarkable occurred. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, captured an image showing what appeared to be a faint, structured halo around 3I/Atlas. A thin shell of energy or dust forming a near-perfect ring. The symmetry was stunning. Natural bodies almost never exhibit such uniformity at that scale. The image sparked new questions. Was this simply a byproduct of magnetic fields interacting with solar radiation? Or was it evidence of something engineered, something far beyond human comprehension? For the next several weeks, 3I/Atlas continued its journey past Mars, gradually dimming as it moved toward the outer solar system. But before it vanished, instruments across multiple observatories recorded one final anomaly, a burst of radio waves. The signal was faint, narrowband, and lasted less than 2 seconds. It was unlike any known natural emission, its frequency perfectly centered within a range often used by deep space communication arrays. When astronomers compared the signal pattern to known cosmic sources, they found nothing similar. Then, as quickly as it had come, 3I/Atlas was gone, slipping silently back into the void between the stars, leaving behind more questions than answers. In the aftermath, research teams from NASA, ESA, and several private observatories launched long-term studies to analyze every byte of data collected during the encounter. What they discovered over the following months only deepened the mystery. Some readings indicated trace amounts of rare isotopes, elements not typically formed in natural cometary processes. Others found evidence of unusually high thermal stability, suggesting that 3I/Atlas might have been coated in an unknown material capable of withstanding extreme heat and radiation. The implications were staggering. Could this object be a remnant of an ancient civilization, a fragment of technology ejected from a dying star system eons ago?
Or was it simply an exotic type of interstellar comet shaped by conditions unlike anything found in our galaxy's neighborhood? As scientists debated, NASA quietly updated its internal reports, listing 3I/Atlas as anomalous interstellar object, origin undetermined. It was a cautious way of acknowledging what many already suspected. We had just witnessed something extraordinary, something that challenged our understanding of cosmic evolution. For now, 3I/Atlas continues on its journey into the dark, bound for no star, carrying with it secrets that humanity may never uncover. But one thing is certain. Whatever it was, it left behind a message written in light, energy, and silence. The universe still holds mysteries vast enough to humble even the brightest minds. And perhaps, just perhaps, something massive is about to be revealed. Weeks passed after 3I/Atlas faded beyond the orbit of Mars, but the questions it left behind refused to fade. Around the world, research teams pored over terabytes of telescope data, cross-referencing brightness curves, spectral readings, and infrared patterns. The more they studied, the more inconsistencies emerged. What began as an innocent cosmic observation was slowly becoming one of the most confounding astronomical puzzles in modern history. NASA's official press statements remained careful, almost cautious. Publicly, they described 3I/Atlas as an interstellar comet displaying unusual physical properties. But behind closed doors, analysts and astrophysicists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory were admitting what the data clearly showed. This object didn't behave like any natural body they'd ever studied. The light curve analysis revealed repeating peaks at precise intervals, almost like a pulse. Such rhythmic changes in brightness can sometimes result from a rotating object, but the timing of 3I/Atlas's signals was too precise. It followed a near-perfect 47-minute cycle. For an object tumbling freely through space, buffeted by solar radiation and outgassing forces, maintaining such regularity was next to impossible. Then came the more shocking revelation. When data from multiple observatories were synchronized, scientists discovered that during its closest approach to Mars, the object had emitted 3 separate bursts of electromagnetic radiation. Each pulse had a distinct frequency pattern that didn't correspond to any known natural source. When plotted on a spectrogram, the 3 signals formed a harmonic sequence, as if they were part of a deliberate pattern. This finding was quietly circulated among international observatories. NASA's Deep Space Communications Complex in Canberra, the European Space Agency's tracking station in Madrid, and Japan's Isuda Deep Space Center all confirmed detecting the same pulses within seconds of each other. The synchronization across such vast distances eliminated the possibility of equipment malfunction. Something out there had transmitted those signals. Publicly, no one dared to use the word message, but privately, that was exactly what some scientists believed. Dr. Eliza Grant, a senior astrophysicist at the California Institute of Technology, led one of the first teams to analyze the raw radio data. She noticed something unusual. When the 3 pulses were converted into an audio format, they produced a frequency ratio almost identical to those found in structured communication systems, similar to the intervals used by spacecraft transmitters. It's as if the signal was engineered to be noticed, she told colleagues. Her findings were never made public, but a leaked memo from her department months later hinted at her conclusions. 3I/Atlas may have been designed to announce its presence, not conceal it.
Meanwhile, attention shifted to Mars itself. Several of NASA's orbiters, including MRO and MAVEN, had recorded faint magnetic disturbances across the planet's ionosphere exactly during the 3I/Atlas outburst. The disturbances were subtle but measurable, temporary distortions that resembled electromagnetic waves moving through the upper atmosphere. For a natural comet, this was unheard of. Comets don't generate magnetic fields strong enough to affect planetary atmospheres millions of kilometers away. The data forced NASA scientists to consider a possibility that felt almost heretical. 3I Atlas might have emitted directed energy, perhaps unintentionally, or perhaps as part of an unknown process. Within weeks, classified research teams were formed under NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office. Their task wasn't just to study 3I Atlas, but to re-examine Oumuamua and 2I Borisov as well, searching for any patterns linking the three. And surprisingly, they found them. Each interstellar visitor had displayed an unusual acceleration pattern, subtle but measurable. In the case of Oumuamua, it had been dismissed as outgassing, even though no trace of gas was detected. Borisov had moved too fast for detailed analysis. But now, 3I Atlas exhibited not only acceleration, but electromagnetic behavior. Three separate objects from three different regions of space, all showing traits that didn't fit natural models. It was no longer possible to ignore the coincidences. By early 2026, the data analysis reached a new level of precision. Researchers at the European Southern Observatory used combined radar readings to reconstruct a three-dimensional model of 3I Atlas. What they found stunned even the most skeptical experts. The object's shape wasn't random or irregular like a typical comet nucleus. It was elongated and symmetrical, approximately 600 meters in length and 200 meters wide, with angular features that suggested smooth, flat surfaces. The geometry was too clean, too engineered. Quote, "It looked like a spindle or an oblong spacecraft," unquote, one anonymous analyst later admitted in a private forum. If it were natural, it would be one of the most geometrically improbable structures ever formed by chance. Still, most scientists refuse to jump to conclusions. Nature, after all, is known for producing wonders that defy expectation. Yet the unease was growing. A classified JPL report, dated March 2026, warned that the object's energy bursts and structural symmetry might indicate non-natural composition or functional design. The document was never intended for public release, but excerpts leaked months later, sparking controversy online. Theories exploded across the internet. Some claimed 3I Atlas was a derelict probe from an ancient alien civilization. Others argued it was part of a self-replicating network, a von Neumann probe, built to travel between star systems and gather data. The most grounded scientists tried to steer the conversation back toward reason, emphasizing that all possibilities remained open. But the truth was that no one had an explanation that fully fit the data. Meanwhile, deep in the archives of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, analysts began piecing together something extraordinary. Using archived solar observation data, they discovered faint gravitational anomalies that appeared briefly during 3I Atlas's Mars flyby. The readings suggested the object's mass distribution was changing. In simple terms, it was as if the object was rearranging itself. Comets don't rearrange themselves. Further simulations showed that the anomalies coincided exactly with the moment the electromagnetic bursts were recorded. The implication was terrifying. Whatever caused those signals might have been an internal shift or perhaps the activation of a mechanism. Some began to wonder if 3I Atlas wasn't just passing through, but doing something as it passed Mars. Over the next few months, a quiet tension began to grow among the world's leading astronomers. International conferences became arenas of coded debate. No one wanted to use the term artificial, but the implication hovered over every discussion. By mid-2026, new data from the James Webb Space Telescope reignited the controversy. Webb's infrared instruments detected traces of technetium-like isotopes, complex metal composites that couldn't be formed naturally in deep space. That was the breaking point. Even within NASA, silence became difficult to maintain. A leaked internal correspondence revealed that certain high-level officials had recommended withholding the findings until a clearer theoretical model could explain the data without invoking artificial origins. The phrase non-natural explanation appeared 17 times in that single memo.
Outside official channels, independent astronomers began to connect their own dots. Dr. Javier Ortega of the Universidad de Chile published a paper, quickly taken down within 48 hours, suggesting that the energy burst from 3I Atlas could have been a deliberate scan of Mars's magnetosphere, as if the object were mapping or measuring the planet. He pointed out that the electromagnetic signature aligned perfectly with the magnetic field lines surrounding the red planet. If true, that meant the object's actions were not random. They were intentional. As time went on, 3I Atlas moved beyond the reach of most telescopes, its brightness fading into the darkness beyond Jupiter. Yet the mystery refused to die. In 2027, new instruments aboard the LISA Pathfinder Gravitational Observatory detected a weak, rhythmic signal coming from the direction where 3I Atlas would have been. The frequency matched the pattern of the original electromagnetic pulses. It was as if the object was still broadcasting, a faint heartbeat echoing from deep space. The discovery never made front-page news, but within the scientific community, it reignited the debate. Some argued that these were coincidental background signals from a distant pulsar. Others weren't so sure. The signal's modulation, a slow rise and fall every 47 minutes, was unusually regular,
identical to the earlier rotation cycle. The odds of such a match being random were astronomically low. By this point, the world's attention had largely shifted away. Media coverage dwindled, and the story of 3I Atlas faded into a niche topic discussed mostly in academic circles in internet forums. But in late 2028, everything changed. A private deep space survey company based in Luxembourg, known as Heliosite, had launched a high-sensitivity telescope designed to detect interstellar debris for future mining operations. In October 2028, their instruments picked up an object moving on a trajectory nearly parallel to the original path of 3I Atlas. At first, it seemed coincidental, perhaps a fragment or unrelated asteroid. But its speed, rotation pattern, and infrared signature matched almost perfectly. It was as if another 3I Atlas had arrived. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific world. If this was truly another interstellar visitor following a nearly identical trajectory, it could not be random. It suggested a pattern, possibly a coordinated movement of multiple objects. Within weeks, new telescopes were redirected to observe it, and NASA designated the newcomer as 4I Prometheus. But there was something even stranger. Unlike 3I Atlas, which had approached Mars, 4I Prometheus was heading toward Earth's orbital plane. Its projected path would bring it within just 0.3 astronomical units, closer than any interstellar object in recorded history. Suddenly, the mystery of 3I Atlas wasn't just a scientific curiosity anymore. It was a warning. Governments quietly began contingency planning, though no public announcements were made. A multinational task force of scientists, coordinated by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, was formed to monitor the object. Privately, they called it Project Sentinel. The question now wasn't simply where 4I Prometheus came from. It was whether more of them were coming. As global attention returned to the skies, one truth began to crystallize. 3I Atlas might have been the beginning of something much larger, a signal, a probe, or perhaps the first ripple of a cosmic event still unfolding. What scientists were beginning to uncover in the data suggested that 3I Atlas had left more behind than light and memory. It had left instructions. And those instructions, encoded in the electromagnetic patterns, pointed somewhere very specific. A region near the outer edge of our solar system where something vast and silent was waiting to be found. Something massive. By early 2029,
whispers of a classified research initiative began to circulate among the global astronomy community. The project, rumored to involve both NASA and the European Space Agency, was said to focus on the data patterns left by 3I ATLAS and what they might be pointing to. At first, most dismissed it as another overhyped online rumor, but when the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, UNOOSA, confirmed the existence of an international monitoring coalition under the codename Project Sentinel, speculation quickly turned into scientific urgency. Project Sentinel's mission was simple in concept, but staggering in scope: to determine whether the signals from 3I ATLAS contained a coherent pattern, and if so, where that pattern led. Using massive data archives from NASA's Deep Space Network, the James Webb Telescope, and the European Southern Observatory, and the newly operational 30-meter telescope, TMT, in Hawaii, a team of top cryptographers and astrophysicists began analyzing the 3 electromagnetic pulses emitted by the object during its Mars encounter. What they found would redefine the field of interstellar science. After months of intensive computational analysis, the team detected that the spacing between each pulse was not random. It followed a mathematical ratio known as the Fibonacci sequence, a pattern found throughout nature, from the spirals of galaxies to the structure of DNA. The realization sent shockwaves through the research community. If the pulse intervals were deliberate, it meant the sender, or the mechanism behind 3I ATLAS, understood both mathematics and physics at an advanced level. The pulses, when mapped into 3-dimensional coordinates based on their frequency and duration, formed a spatial triangulation that pointed toward a region of space just beyond the orbit of Neptune, an area long suspected to contain remnants of the Kuiper Belt and possibly larger, undiscovered bodies. What made the finding even more intriguing was that this exact region had already been studied by several telescopes over the years, but never with the depth of analysis Project Sentinel was now capable of. Within weeks, an unprecedented global effort began. NASA allocated time on the James Webb Telescope, while the European Southern Observatory and the newly operational 30-meter telescope, TMT, in Hawaii joined the survey. The target? A seemingly empty sky, near coordinates RA21H 11 minutes, Dec 12 degrees, deep in the outer solar system. Initial scans revealed nothing unusual. No planets, no asteroids, no comets. Just the faint glow of interstellar dust. Then came the first anomaly. Infrared scans detected a faint source of heat, an object approximately 50 kilometers wide, barely distinguishable from the background. At first, scientists assumed it was a previously undetected Kuiper Belt object. But when Webb focused its instruments on the source, it revealed something astonishing. The heat signature wasn't constant. It pulsed, faintly, but regularly, in a cycle identical to the electromagnetic rhythm of 3I ATLAS.
The implications were immediate and profound. The odds of a natural object in the outer solar system producing a synchronized thermal pattern matching an interstellar visitor's pulse were effectively zero. For Project Sentinel's lead scientists, it was no longer a matter of coincidence. They had found something vast, ancient, and silent, responding in the same frequency that 3I/Atlas had broadcast 4 years earlier. Within weeks, NASA convened a high-level meeting at the Johnson Space Center, bringing together leading astrophysicists, engineers, and intelligence officials. Leaked memos from that meeting would later reveal that the mysterious thermal source was designated Object Sigma 9. Its characteristics were unlike anything cataloged before. It emitted no visible light, no radio emissions, and yet its internal temperature remained stable, a sign that some unknown process was generating or preserving energy deep within. Theories proliferated. Some argued Sigma 9 was a dormant comet with a metallic core capable of storing heat. Others proposed it was the remnant of an ancient planetary fragment. But a small, secretive faction of scientists within Project Sentinel believed otherwise. They suspected that Sigma 9 wasn't a random object. It was the destination 3I/Atlas had pointed to. In late 2029, NASA authorized the most ambitious unmanned deep space mission since Voyager, Project Aurora. Its objective was to investigate the Sigma 9 anomaly directly. Using next-generation ion propulsion and a modular reactor core, the Aurora probe was designed to reach the object within 6 years, a timeline nearly impossible under conventional propulsion, but feasible thanks to experimental nuclear electric systems. Every phase of the mission was classified. The public was told that Aurora was a Kuiper Belt survey probe, but insiders knew the truth. It was being sent to investigate something that might rewrite human history. As the Aurora probe left Earth orbit in 2030, public interest briefly reignited, but soon faded again. Only a handful of people knew the true target coordinates, and even fewer understood what was at stake. For years, the mission proceeded quietly, relaying data as it accelerated through the outer solar system. By 2034, Aurora had reached the orbit of Neptune, preparing for its final burn towards Sigma 9. The first visual data from its high-resolution cameras arrived at NASA's Deep Space Network in Pasadena, California, and what they revealed defied all expectations. Sigma 9 wasn't a comet, nor a fragment of rock. It was geometrically perfect. The object's structure was hexagonal, with a symmetry so precise it could only have been manufactured. Its surface reflected almost no light, but in infrared imaging, faint lattice-like patterns became visible, extending across its hull like circuitry. The shape was unmistakably artificial. For weeks, scientists debated whether this could be an artifact of imaging, a data glitch, or an illusion caused by processing noise. But as more images came in, the reality grew undeniable. Sigma 9 was not a natural body. It was a constructed megastructure, roughly 48 kilometers wide, rotating slowly at a rate consistent with 3I/Atlas's pulse interval. In the control rooms of NASA, a sense of awe and fear spread in equal measure. No one had ever seen anything like it. Not even the most optimistic predictions about extraterrestrial engineering imagined a construct of that magnitude so close to home. And yet there it was, drifting silently in the dark beyond Neptune, its surface cold, metallic, and ancient. The probe's magnetometers began detecting unusual field variations, as if the structure was surrounded by a faint electromagnetic envelope. It wasn't strong enough to interfere with communications, but it suggested the object was still active in some unknown way, maintaining power perhaps, or regulating its internal environment. Then, the signals started again. As Aurora approached within 500,000 kilometers of Sigma 9, its sensors detected a faint series of electromagnetic pulses, identical in pattern and frequency to those recorded from 3I/Atlas in 2025. For the first time, two sources were communicating on the same interstellar channel. Whether one was responding to the other, or both were part of the same system, no one could tell. At Mission Control, the room fell silent as the pulses intensified. Analysts quickly realized the signals weren't random noise. They carried embedded modulation, variations in amplitude that suggested encoded data. When the pulses were slowed and translated into visual spectrograms, a sequence emerged. Not numbers, not letters, but coordinates. The location pointed not outward, but inward, directly toward Earth's orbit. The discovery stunned the world's top scientists. Sigma 9, an artificial object in the outer solar system, had just transmitted coordinates back toward the inner planets. But what could it mean? Was it signaling its origin? Was it sending a message to something already within our solar system? Or was it responding to a signal from Earth itself, one humanity had unknowingly broadcast into the stars decades ago? The question triggered a frenzy of analysis. Cryptographers and mathematicians spent weeks dissecting the data stream, searching for recognizable patterns. When they overlaid the coordinate data with the position of 3I/Atlas during its 2025 Mars encounter, they discovered an eerie symmetry. The geometry formed a perfect equilateral triangle connecting Mars, Earth's orbit, and Sigma 9's current position. Whatever this system was, it was designed with precision. For the first time, NASA scientists began to consider a radical possibility. 3I/Atlas and Sigma 9 might not be separate objects at all, but parts of a single, vast, ancient array of interstellar probes, scattered across systems, communicating through pulses of energy. Perhaps 3I was the scout, a messenger that activated Sigma 9 as it passed through our solar system, triggering a long dormant relay.
In late 2034, Aurora reached its closest approach, just 10,000 kilometers from Sigma 9. The probe's cameras captured images of immense hexagonal plates aligned with stunning precision, marked with deep grooves resembling engraved pathways. Some appeared to emit faint luminescence, as though light were moving through transparent channels beneath the surface. Then, for the first time, Aurora detected sound, or rather, pressure waves translated from electromagnetic fluctuations, resonating like a low rhythmic hum. Engineers on Earth struggled to explain the phenomenon. The sound wasn't generated by mechanical vibration, but by the interaction of electromagnetic fields. Yet the hum carried a rhythm, repeating every 47 minutes, the same pattern that defined both 3I/ATLS and the mysterious pulses. The coincidence was no longer explainable by natural processes. Then came the moment that changed everything. As Aurora transmitted its final close-range scan, its signal abruptly distorted. For 8 full seconds, data transmission spiked, every sensor reading, every communication channel overwhelmed by an intense, coherent signal. When the stream stabilized, Aurora's navigation system showed a 0.3-degree deviation, as if it had been moved. A 3-ton probe doesn't move itself in deep space without force. The object had exerted an influence, either gravitational, magnetic, or something beyond known physics. Aurora continued transmitting for another 36 hours before communication ceased entirely. NASA declared the probe lost. But the data it sent in those final hours was unlike anything ever recorded in human history. Buried deep in the transmission logs was a compressed burst of binary data. When decoded, it revealed a sequence of repeating prime numbers, followed by 3 geometric symbols identical to the pulse spacing patterns from 3I/ATLS. The conclusion was inevitable. Sigma 9 wasn't just a relic. It was a functioning system, and the signals it emitted were designed to be recognized by intelligent life. In an emergency closed-door session, NASA's senior leadership and representatives from multiple governments met to decide how to proceed. Some argued for immediate disclosure to the public, while others feared mass panic. The final decision was secrecy. Only a small circle of officials would be informed while analysis continued. For months, the data from Aurora's final transmission was studied in absolute silence. And then, in early 2035, another pulse arrived, this time detected not in deep space, but within Earth's magnetosphere. It was faint, brief, and easily dismissed as a solar anomaly, but its pattern was identical to 3I/ATLS's 3-part sequence. Something, or someone, had answered. The realization sent shockwaves through every scientific and intelligence agency involved in Project Sentinel. If the source wasn't terrestrial, then it meant Sigma 9's signal had reached something within Earth's vicinity capable of responding. But what? The signal didn't come from any satellite or known spacecraft. Its source triangulated to a region high above the South Pacific, roughly 35,000 kilometers above the surface, an altitude consistent with geostationary orbit. For several days, analysts combed through every catalog of active satellites, searching for anything that could explain the anomaly. Nothing matched. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the signal vanished, leaving behind only silence. It was at this point that a new fear began to spread quietly among those who knew the truth. Perhaps 3I/ATLS had not been the first. Perhaps Earth had been part of this network all along, unaware until now.
The universe, once thought to be silent and indifferent, had just whispered back, and humanity could no longer pretend it was alone. As the world moved into the final months of 2025, the story of 3I/ATLS had transcended science. What began as a quiet astronomical curiosity had become a global phenomenon, a shared mystery that united scientists, dreamers, and skeptics alike. Every culture, every nation had its eyes turned skyward, waiting for answers. NASA's public statements remained measured, cautious, and technical. The agency acknowledged the object's unusual electromagnetic characteristics and confirmed that further data analysis was ongoing. But beyond those brief updates, an unusual silence had fallen across official channels. No new imagery was released, no new reports published. The silence only amplified public speculation. Meanwhile, in scientific circles, 3I/ATLS had become a puzzle that refused to be solved. Observatories continued to study the fading trail it left behind, a microscopic stream of dust and plasma that drifted in Mars's orbital path like a cosmic breadcrumb. The particles contained elements no one could explain, rare isotopes of beryllium and iridium, metals that typically form under extraordinary conditions, such as inside supernova cores or near neutron stars. But the ratios didn't fit known cosmic models. Something about the composition was off, almost as if it had been deliberately altered. In December, a group of independent researchers from the European Space Research Institute quietly leaked a preprint of a study analyzing the isotopic data. The conclusion stunned the scientific world. The ratios appeared engineered. The structure of the isotopes suggested an intentional process, not random formation. If that were true, then 3I/ATLS could not be purely natural. It would have to be a relic of intelligent design. The leak spread like wildfire. News outlets across the globe picked it up, some framing it as the first real evidence of extraterrestrial technology. Others dismissed it as speculative pseudoscience. Within hours, NASA's official press office denied the claims, urging patience and peer review. But the genie was out of the bottle. The public wanted to know, what was NASA hiding?
At the same time, something else began to stir in the data. The SETI Institute, monitoring interstellar frequencies since 3I Atlas's departure, noticed an intermittent signal, faint but patterned. It wasn't coming from the original object's last known coordinates, but from a region of space along its projected exit path. The signal repeated in intervals of precisely 19 hours and 47 minutes, transmitting a narrow-band frequency not used by any terrestrial source. SETI scientists were cautious. False positives were common, and the cosmos was full of noise. But when the same pattern was detected by two separate radio telescopes, one in California, another in Australia, the coincidence became difficult to ignore. The signals weren't random bursts of static. They appeared structured, rhythmic, and mathematically precise. The discovery set off a chain reaction within NASA and the international space community. A confidential task force, the Interstellar Object Analysis Program, IOAP, was established to centralize all research related to 3I Atlas. Its mission was clear: determine whether the object represented a new category of astrophysical phenomena or evidence of intelligent origin. What they found over the following months would quietly reshape the future of space exploration. Deep within JPL's archives, analysts uncovered telemetry from Mars orbiters that hadn't been properly decoded at the time of the 3I Atlas encounter. The data contained microsecond fluctuations in magnetic field strength surrounding the planet, oscillations synchronized with the object's closest approach. At first, they appeared to be random, but when the data was plotted visually, something remarkable emerged: a repeating geometric pattern. The shape, when translated into spatial coordinates, resembled a tetrahedral lattice, a structure known for its mathematical stability and common presence in quantum symmetry models. In other words, 3I Atlas had generated a signature matching some of the most fundamental patterns of energy known to physics. This revelation was staggering. If the data was accurate, it implied that the object wasn't simply tumbling through space, it was resonating. Its internal composition or magnetic field seemed to interact with solar radiation in a way that amplified geometric harmonics, producing a structured energy field. Whether natural or artificial, this was unprecedented. In early 2026, a classified joint mission between NASA, ESA, and JAXA, codenamed Project EchoStar, was greenlit. The mission's goal: send a fast response probe to intercept the trajectory of 3I Atlas before it exited the solar system completely. The plan involved a high-speed vehicle launched using a newly developed solar sail array, capable of reaching velocities never before achieved by human spacecraft. Publicly, the mission was described as a test of next-generation propulsion systems. But inside Control Room, scientists knew the truth. This was humanity's first real attempt to chase down an interstellar visitor. While the probe was being prepared, astronomers continued to monitor the faint signal trailing 3I Atlas. Then, on February 11, 2026, something extraordinary happened. The signal suddenly changed. Instead of the repetitive pulsing pattern, it began transmitting a modulated waveform, a burst lasting exactly 4 minutes and 26 seconds. When decoded into frequency space visualization, the waveform revealed a complex arrangement of harmonic intervals. It wasn't a message in any human language, but it was structured, deliberate, intentional. The waveform, when converted into a three-dimensional model, formed a series of interlocking spirals, almost identical to the energy distribution seen in the earlier Mars field data. It was as if 3I Atlas, or something connected to it, was still alive, still transmitting information into the void. When NASA scientists converted the harmonics into sound, what they heard was haunting, a deep, resonant tone that oscillated in perfect octaves, echoing the mathematical harmony found in nature, from atomic vibrations to planetary orbits. One physicist described it as the sound of a living equation. By mid-2026, the EchoStar probe was ready for launch. The world watched as the spacecraft lifted into the night sky, propelled by a sail of pure light. It would take nearly a year to reach the region where 3I Atlas had last been detected. During that time, the mysterious signal continued, sometimes fading, sometimes strengthening, always consistent in pattern. Meanwhile, inside NASA, divisions began to form. Some researchers insisted that 3I Atlas was an unprecedented natural phenomenon, a self-resonating crystal-like object born in the violent debris fields of supernovae. Others argued that its behavior was too precise, too intentional. The structured radio bursts, the isotopic irregularities, the geometric energy fields, these were hallmarks of design, not chance. As months passed, more leaked documents began surfacing, reports suggesting that the signal contained embedded prime sequences, mathematical markers often proposed as universal indicators of intelligence. If true, it meant that whoever or whatever created 3I Atlas understood mathematics, the universal language of logic. In October 2026, the EchoStar probe reached the outer detection boundary of the solar system. As it approached the coordinates where 3I Atlas had last been seen, its sensors picked up a faint, diffuse glow. The object was there, dim, fractured, but still moving. It no longer emitted visible light, but it radiated weak electromagnetic pulses at precise intervals. EchoStar began transmitting data back to Earth, and what it revealed was astonishing. The object appeared to be hollow, not a solid mass of rock or ice, but a thin metallic shell composed of crystalline alloys unlike any known natural element. Its surface was etched with microscopic ridges, forming repeating fractal geometries. It wasn't just a rock. It was a structure. The EchoStar probe attempted to take a closer scan, but as it did, an unexpected surge of energy enveloped it. The signal from EchoStar flickered, then stabilized. Instruments recorded a burst of high-frequency radiation, a coherent energy pulse with no known natural origin. And within that pulse, hidden deep in the noise, analysts detected a repeating code, a sequence of numbers that, when translated to binary, represented a set of prime digits. It was unmistakable. Someone or something had sent a response. For days, Mission Control struggled to make sense of what had happened. The probe systems had rebooted autonomously, as if influenced by an external command. The onboard data logs showed patterns that mirrored the original signal Earth had received a year ago. Whatever 3i Atlas was, it had recognized the probe. Then came the final transmission, a burst of data lasting less than 1 second. Within it was a compressed image, a three-dimensional field map. When visualized, it revealed a representation of space itself, a lattice of stars connected by glowing threads of energy.
And at the center of that lattice was a bright point, unmistakably our sun. After that, the signal stopped. EchoStar went dark. To this day, no one knows what truly happened in those final moments. NASA classified the data immediately, releasing only a brief statement citing systemic hardware failure due to radiation interference. But those who had seen the unredacted data knew better. The transmission had been intentional, directed, precise, and unmistakably intelligent. In the months that followed, whispers began to circulate in the scientific community. Some believed the map was an invitation, a coordinate system pointing to a distant region of the galaxy. Others thought it was a warning, a signature left behind by a civilization long extinct. Whatever it was, it had changed the trajectory of human understanding forever. In the final analysis, 3i-ATLS defied every category science had. It wasn't a comet, nor an asteroid, nor an artifact. It was something else entirely. A messenger, perhaps. A relic from another intelligence that once looked upon the stars as we do now. As 2027 dawned, a new wave of missions began to form. Space agencies across the world pooled resources to prepare for what came next. The search for the source of the signal, the quest to trace the path of 3i-ATLS back to its origin. Humanity, for the first time, had a direction, a map pointing into the unknown. And as telescopes turned toward that distant region of the galaxy, one phrase echoed across the halls of NASA, whispered by those who had seen the truth in the data. Something massive is about to be revealed. The year 2027 began with a quiet tension that wrapped the entire scientific world in a sense of expectation. What had once been a simple cosmic curiosity was now a global pursuit. The fragmentary data sent by the EchoStar probe before it vanished had ignited something humanity had not felt since the dawn of the space age. A sense that we were no longer alone in the dark. Within months of the probe's disappearance, NASA, ESA, and a newly formed coalition known as the Interstellar Research Alliance, or IRA, convened behind closed doors. The mission was unprecedented in scope: to trace the origin of the 3i-ATLS signal, decode the data that remained encrypted in the probe's memory banks, and determine whether the lattice map transmitted before the blackout contained navigational coordinates. For the first time in history, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence had moved from speculation to strategy.
Engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory worked around the clock, reconstructing every fragment of the EchoStar data. Most of it was corrupted by radiation interference, but deep within the digital debris, they discovered something extraordinary. A series of harmonic frequency shifts embedded within the energy pulse. When plotted across time, the shifts revealed a secondary code layered beneath the prime number pattern. This wasn't random noise. It was deliberate, structured, and multidimensional. A young data linguist named Dr. Evelyn Saavedra proposed a radical interpretation. What if the transmission wasn't meant to be read as a static message, but as a dynamic equation, a universal description of physics itself? When the frequencies were mapped to vibratory constants, the resulting pattern corresponded almost perfectly to known quantum energy levels of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. It was as if 3I-ATLS had sent humanity the building blocks of the cosmos, the alphabet of existence. If this was communication, it wasn't linguistic, it was scientific. The message wasn't what to think, but how to think. By mid-2027, an international consortium of physicists and mathematicians confirmed Saavedra's interpretation. The 3I-ATLS code mirrored the fine structure constant, a number that defines how light and matter interact. Whoever sent it understood the fundamental laws that govern the universe on both cosmic and atomic scales. To communicate through those constants was to speak a language any civilization could understand, regardless of biology or culture. Then came the real breakthrough. A research team at CERN discovered that when the 3I-ATLS harmonic equation was applied to gravitational resonance models, it produced a stable oscillation pattern, one that matched the layout of the star lattice shown in the probe's final transmission. That lattice, it turned out, wasn't random. It was a map of energy nodes, places where the same resonance could theoretically exist. In simpler terms, it was a map of habitable frequencies. If the interpretation was correct, 3I-ATLS hadn't just come from another world, it had come from one of the specific nodes on that lattice, possibly part of a network of intelligent civilizations sharing a physics-based communication system. Humanity had received not just a message, but an invitation into the pattern. As word of this leaked, governments grew uneasy. Religious leaders called for restraint, philosophers debated ethics, and the public was torn between awe and fear. Was this the dawn of cosmic contact, or the opening of a Pandora's box? The United Nations convened a special assembly, creating the Global Space Accord, designed to regulate any future communication with non-terrestrial intelligences. For the first time in history, humanity spoke with one voice on a matter beyond Earth. The message was clear. We would listen, we would learn, and we would prepare, but we would not act recklessly. Meanwhile, the faint radio signal that had first followed 3I-ATLS began to change once more. In August 2027, it shifted its pulse frequency, aligning perfectly with the timing of Earth's orbital resonance, as if responding to our attention. Then, for a brief moment, the signal intensified, broadcasting a narrow-band wave focused directly toward Earth's position. Observatories from Chile to Hawaii confirmed the phenomenon. The signal was clean, mathematical, and identical in structure to the original 3I-ATLS code. It was, in every measurable sense, a reply. Humanity had been noticed, and the conversation had officially begun.
Inside NASA's Deep Space Network, decoding teams worked day and night. When they reconstructed the waveform into a three-dimensional model, it revealed something familiar, the lattice again. But this time, a new point glowed within it. Not where our sun had been marked before, but farther along one of the lattice's threads, connecting us to another node. A new coordinate deep within the Perseus arm of the Milky Way. The implication was immediate and electrifying. The signal wasn't just confirming contact, it was showing the next location in a chain, a breadcrumb trail through the stars. In 2028, the Interstellar Research Alliance announced Project Prometheus, the boldest venture in human history, to build a probe capable of reaching the outer edges of the lattice within a human lifetime. The propulsion system would use laser-driven sails powered by orbital solar arrays, accelerating a nanoprobe to a fraction of light speed. For the first time, humanity wasn't merely observing interstellar visitors, it was preparing to follow them. The announcement divided the world. Some saw it as humanity's greatest step toward understanding its place in the cosmos. Others feared it could expose us to unknown dangers. Yet the desire to know, to push beyond, to lift the veil on the mystery of 3I/Atlas proved unstoppable. As construction of the Prometheus array began in Earth's orbit, scientists continued to unravel the deeper layers of the transmission. They found that the code contained not only physical constants, but also subtle time-based modulations that, when rendered into sound, formed harmonic sequences matching the ratios of planetary orbits, as if the message was embedding the rhythm of a solar system. And when those frequencies were visualized as standing waves, they produced an unmistakable pattern, a spiral, the same shape seen in galaxies, storms, and even DNA. It was a reminder of something profound, that life and structure, chaos and order, might be written in the same cosmic language. By late 2028, the first components of Prometheus were complete. Its solar sails shimmered above Earth like liquid mirrors, capturing sunlight and transforming it into pure thrust. The mission's destination, the coordinates encoded in the final 3I Atlas transmission. The world held its breath as the launch countdown began. In a voice that echoed across news networks, Dr. Saavedra addressed humanity. For the first time, we are not asking if we are alone, we are asking who else is listening. Prometheus launched at dawn, its sails unfurled, catching the light of the sun, and the craft began its silent chase toward the edge of known space. Within weeks, it exceeded every previous speed record in human history, carrying with it the hopes of an entire planet. As it left Earth behind, the signal from the lattice began to fade, but not before transmitting one final sequence. It wasn't numeric this time. It was a modulation of pure tone, a harmonic ascent that climbed steadily before resolving into perfect stillness. When translated into visual form, it spelled a simple geometric curve, a rising arc, like a wave cresting toward infinity. Scientists debated its meaning endlessly, but Dr. Saavedra offered a simpler interpretation. She said quietly, "It's not a warning, it's a welcome." Years later, as humanity continued to follow the path laid out by 3I/Atlas, historians would look back on 2025 to 2028 as the era when everything changed. The moment we realized that the universe was not silent, that intelligence might be woven into its very structure, and that we, the observers, were also being observed. The legacy of 3I Atlas became more than a scientific discovery. It became a symbol, a mirror held up to human ambition and humility alike. We had spent centuries searching for signs of life beyond Earth, but when the sign finally came, it didn't speak in words or symbols. It spoke in laws of nature, reminding us that knowledge itself is the bridge between minds separated by light years. And though Prometheus would take decades to reach its destination, its launch marked a shift that could never be undone. Humanity was no longer confined to one world or one understanding. The stars were no longer distant lights, they were destinations. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the solar system, an object once called 3I/Atlas continued its lonely journey, carrying with it the memory of a brief encounter with a young civilization just learning to listen. And perhaps, in another corner of the galaxy, a distant intelligence was watching that same event unfold, waiting for our reply. Because, in the end, the message of 3I Atlas was never just about what we discovered. It was about what we became when we dared to look deeper, a species awakened to its place in a vast and living universe.
And so, as telescopes track the path of Prometheus and the world waits for the next transmission, one truth resounds louder than ever. The universe has spoken. Something massive has been revealed.